Welcome to the Runningdrummer.com podcast with your host, the man who puts the rhythm into running, Greg Santini.
Once again, welcome back to the Running Drummer podcast. We got a really awesome special podcast for you guys today. Mandy Habener, who is an actual yogi who lives in where does she live again, Mike?
Sunshine Coast, Australia.
Sunshine,
an hour north of Brisbane.
Right, so an hour north of Brisbane, Sunshine Coast of Australia. Very far away from myself, not too far away from Mike, who lives in New Zealand, obviously. A good friend of Mike's, and I'll let Mike kind of introduce her and tell you a little bit about what we talked about with Mandy, the benefits of yoga, the benefits of meditation, how it's going to relate to your well-being, and also how it relates to your performance as an athlete and or endurance athlete or triathlete. I think it's really important that you people listen to this, because I think it's extremely important that you guys listen to this. But anyway, without further ado, Mike, go ahead and introduce Mandy to the show.
Yeah, Mandy, a friend of mine from back in Australia, and when we first started this podcast talking about fitness, music and fitness, but as far as the fitness aspect, Mandy was one of the first people that I thought of contacting, because she is a bona fide yogi. She's had her training done in the Far East, in India, in Indonesia. She practices a studio, but also organizes yoga retreats. She does teacher training. She actually teaches and trains yogis. Just to drop some info on her, you can find all of her information and what she's about on mandyhabener.com. That's MandyHabener.com. You can also find her on Facebook at Mandy Habener Yoga. You can also email her at mandyhabeneryoga@gmail.com. And if you're inclined, give her a call in Australia. Countries, it's plus 61405-358-103. But Mandy, basically, she first came to, she's going to tell us, she's going to talk about how she came to yoga as a practitioner in the year 2007. And then she was a triathlon, Ironman competitor, very seriously into that, and basically just gave up her career as a civil engineer and embraced yoga to its fullest to make a life out of that, both personally and financially. And we're super happy that we were able to get her on the show. She instilled a lot of wisdom and schooled us on this whole thing, and also talking about a lot about meditation as well, which you guys will hear when the show rolls.
Awesome, Mike. Thanks so much. And again, our sponsor, our one and only sponsor, and if you're inclined to be a sponsor for our show, please contact us by going to www.runningdrummer.com. You can send us an email, and we will definitely promote whatever it is that you're looking to promote. But our one sponsor today is, of course, Comlink. Comlink Total Solutions, an amazing company that basically, it's sort of like the Travelocity for telecommunications. So if you're looking for TV service, if you're looking for satellite service, if you're looking for internet, whatever it is, phone, TV, internet, they work with all major carriers, including Spectrum, Comcast, DirecTV, HughesNet, Viasat, you name it, these guys do it. Not only do they do it residentially, but they do it on the commercial side as well. So if you are an IT person that works with lots of different businesses and you need to find internet connections and get paid for that, they will help you with that. Also, anyone that mentions Running Drummer podcast anytime they call Comlink will receive a $50 gift card from Comlink for signing up for any one of their triple play services. Their phone number is 1-800-668-1963, and you can also visit them at comlinkbundle.com. All right, so without further ado, let's introduce and get this interview going. I think this was a super awesome interview, Mike. I got to say, it was probably one of the best interviews we've done so far. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think that talking about yoga for an hour would be all that much interesting, but really, it's one of the most interesting things I've ever talked about. because it gets into so.
It's definitely a life changer, and Mandy really demonstrates how that is the case, and we're definitely gonna. I hope we get some reactions from the audience on this one, because I'm sure they'll have a lot of questions, and what we're planning on doing is having Mandy come back to do some Q&A sessions. And if you email us on our website, we'll produce those questions to her, and she's super keen and more than glad to answer those questions for us on another edition.
Right, and you can always email us, guys, directly at GregTheRunningDrummer at gmail.com. Feel free to drop us a question. If you're looking to be on the show, please drop us an email. We'd love to hear from you. All right, guys, without further ado, Mandy Habener, yogi extraordinaire.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. We're stoked to have Mandy Habener, who is a yogi centralized out of I believe it's the Sunshine Coast you're living in Australia. Is that correct, Mandy?
Yes, that's right. Been settled here for a couple of years now.
Beautiful place. Just to give you a little background, Mandy and I know each other from our days living in the metropolis, Bairnsdale, Australia, which is about 4 hours outside of Melbourne in the sticks. I met Mandy through my ex-wife's work. She's a former engineer. She was a very, it might even still be in the future, a competitive triathlete and Ironman a completer, and just all around fitness person. And a few years back, Mandy was getting, I believe it was your certifications for becoming a fitness instructor before you embarked on the yoga journey that you're about to tell us about.
Yes, I totally forgot about that.
Yes, that's right. I was in your test group.
I believe you were in my test group. Yeah, wonderful.
Yes, I was back when I started my own fitness journey. And when Greg and I decided to put this podcast together, Mandy, we wanted it to be a general theme of music and fitness, and of course fitness including all aspects of fitness. And when I started my fitness journey, I began it with P90X, which is a fitness program we've talked a lot about on this program. And one of the facets of P90X program is a very intense yoga day. And when I started that, you and I kind of struck up a conversation about yoga, and I think you were just kind of getting into it at that stage. But we're really happy to have you on the show, because you're one of the first people that I thought of to get on the show to talk about it, because Mandy's, to give you guys a background, Mandy's yoga journey is very unique in terms of she's people do yoga, they go to the classes and all that sort of thing. Well, Mandy took it to the next level, even beyond becoming an instructor. She traveled the Far East, Indonesia, India, to educate herself not on just how to bend your body, but also to understand the philosophy and the whole movement that yoga is, and how unique and actually quite a bit of variety there.
Mike, as I read up on Mandy, I realized that she is basically the equivalent to when Forrest Gump went running. He just kept going and then became a master of running and just never stopped.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if that's
a pretty good summation. Yeah, Greg, you've just nailed it perfectly. And that's been my whole life. Anything I've gone into, it's been 120%.
Yes, I'm sure of that.
This one's just never faded.
Yeah, no, and that's really great.
Yeah.
Because, and not to plug P90X all the time, but one of the things the creator of P90X, Tony Horton, said was that if he had to give up every single bit of exercise and routine he's ever done and keep one, the one he would keep is yoga. Mm-hmm. So I'd love you to kind of give us your story. How did this journey begin? What brought you into what you're doing now, and where are you going, and what do you have upcoming?
Awesome, I'd love to share that. It begins back in, I'm going to say around 2007. I was living in the western suburbs of Melbourne at the time and hitting the gym a fair bit, actually. Going through a pretty tough time, like a bit of a relationship breakdown, and it's a common story, really. I found myself in a class there one day. It was called a body balance class. I didn't really know what it was or what it was about, but it went on in and gave it a go. And it turns out body balance was like a fusion of yoga, of Tai Chi and Pilates, where they pulled it all together. And I'll never, ever forget that first class. Like, I can tell you the songs that were played. And that's how I actually worked out what year it was that I first attended this class, because I had no idea. They'd change up the soundtrack every month or so. Sure. And just had this really incredible experience in the class. I guess I'd probably just been hoarding everything into myself and wasn't really processing any of the emotion of what was happening in my life at the time. And just found that I had this incredible kind of release throughout the class, and it just deeply kind of spoke to my body and where my mind was at the time. So it was kind of from that very first class, you know, I had an inkling that maybe there was a little bit more to it than just bending and stretching.
Right.
So I just kept going. So I stayed with the body balance for a little while. And then I don't know exactly when it it kind of morphed and changed at some point. And I started getting into triathlon. Right. And that was kind of my outlet. I was running a lot, getting on the bike, starting to really build up the mileage. And I was using the yoga to help balance that out. And I started taking some dedicated yoga classes, really, because I just wanted that full hour of like just stretching the body and also inevitably stretching the mind, as happens. Coincidentally, that is.
And of course, this whole thing is set up on the platform that you are a very ambitious young civil engineer looking to work yourself up the corporate ladder. Is that not a fair assessment?
Yeah, totally. So all that's happening in the background as well. Yeah. For quite a few years there, I'm working flat out, 40 plus hour weeks, week in, week out in engineering, and training myself up to do triathlon. Originally, it was just something that I enjoyed doing, but being quite ambitious, it was how far can I take it?
What distances were you doing, Mandy? What distances were you doing on the triathlon at that point?
I was like everyone else. You start off doing like a really small one, might be a 200-meter swim, maybe, I don't know, 8K ride, 2K run, but you just keep pushing it. You see, like, oh my God, this body is capable of so much more than I thought I could ever do. And it's like, where do you stop? So I didn't stop, really. I just kept building it until I was doing half Ironmans and then signing up for full Ironmans. And it was, how fast can I go? So I kind of lived this life of trying to push everything to the extreme, even in my career, just trying to be the best at everything. That's historically been my background, and inevitably, for someone who's doing that quite unconsciously, it leads to burnout pretty quickly.
It would too.
Yeah, so that's where I got to. I got to that state of complete and utter burnout. I was really injured a lot of the time when I was doing the triathlon. I had chronic shin splints. I had stress fractures. I didn't think it was a big deal that I couldn't really run and put my heels on the ground properly. I was like, it's fine. I can run on my toes. It's all good. I'll just keep plugging away because I've got a big race coming up. That used to be my mentality. That was kind of how I lived. Just
and getting to that point of burnout. When we had this discussion with fitness guru Bobby Stevenson on our last show, and we were talking about injury, and we were talking about recovery, we were talking about pushing ourselves beyond that point and recovering properly. Did you find yourself in a situation where you were injuring yourself so often that you just kind of ignored it and decided to just work through it anyway?
It was chronic stuff that I'd been carrying for years and years. I used to play a lot of netball when I was younger as well, and I had the shin splints back then too. And it was purely a function of the mileage that you're kind of doing when you're training up for an Ironman. I had a really awesome program that was really well structured, and it was just stuff that I carried that never really allowed to fully resolve. And I'd be actively managing that through, getting massage at least once a week, spending a couple of hours on, the tennis balls, trying to do my own myofascial release and just trying to keep the body going.
Right.
And were you doing yoga at that? Were you doing yoga at that time, or were you not doing yoga?
Yeah. So yoga was in the background. It was always there.
Okay.
It was like a once a week, like just keeping my body going. Really, that was also part of my maintenance regime. Was at least an hour of yoga a week on a Sunday afternoon.
And did you feel that yoga elongated your career in the triathlon, or even in just distance running? Did you feel like that might have helped you along the way?
Absolutely.
I hope
without
so.
a question of doubt. Yeah, without a question of doubt. And that's where it starts to get really quite interesting. Like, for me, the way I used to view yoga at the time when I was doing all the triathlon stuff, it was just helping me to maintain the length in the muscles. Everything else was shortening them up. That was kind of giving me that stretch out, was maintaining my body. What I probably didn't appreciate at the time was the mental benefits that I was also kind of receiving in the practice, because I was purely focused on the physical at the time.
Right.
But what I started to realize when I got to that point, I guess, of really burning the candle badly at both ends, was that every time I started to really crash, everything else dropped away and I would just do more yoga. Like, subconsciously, my body would be like, yoga's where it's at. Like, let everything else drop away, increase your yoga practice, do more of that now.
All the while you're working your way up the corporate ladder and busting your ass doing, trying to be successful in your career, which really kind of probably led to the other end of that candle to help you get to that point of burnout, I would imagine.
Yeah, totally. I remember the moment like super, super clearly where I got to the point, I'm like, this thing that I'm doing, this is not good. Like, this is not serving me. Like, it's gone too far. I was signed up to do a 100K mountain bike race. Not a big deal for me at the time. I was pretty fit. Should have been able to do it like quite comfortably in a pretty good time. It was also at a time when I was working in Melbourne on a short-term kind of contract, putting in like 100-hour weeks. 75 to 100-hour weeks, and I did that for about a month.
That's just asking for trouble. That's just asking for trouble right there.
Yeah. But it needed to be done. At the time, I felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders and I was responsible. And at the end of the day, that's not the case. But this is what we lead ourselves to believe, that we're more important than we are, and the world will collapse if we don't step up.
So you got to that point, and you got to the point where you just said, basically, I'm done with this. I'm this career I'm pushing isn't serving me, as you pointed out. I want to do something else. What then came to your mind?
So that was at the point where I went and did this 100K mountain bike race, and I showed up there. Should have been super fit, should have been light, felt fine, but like 15, maybe 15, 20 Ks into the ride, I was in tears. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I can't keep going. My back is aching. Like, I physically cannot keep going. That had never happened to me before. And my mates were like, come on, you can do it. Like, this always happens. It gets hard. Like, you keep going. And so I just kept going. And I got through this race. It probably took me double the time it should have. And I got to the end, and I turned to my mate, it was Sharon, funnily enough, and I'm like, I'm done. Like, this is it. Like, she's like, no, we always say that. Like, you always come back for more. Like, we love it. I'm like, no, like, I'm actually done with everything. I'm like, I've got to stop. And I went back to work and I said, look, I need some time out. I've got to go away. Like, I've got to go get my head straight. So I went to Bali. Yeah. So that was definitely the breaking point. And again, like with everything, like I just went to Bali and I immersed myself in yoga. That was kind of my saving grace. When things got tough, I'd do more of the practice.
Right. And when you say you went to Bali to do yoga, that meant, that doesn't mean you just went to Bali and did yoga on the beach by yourself. You literally immersed yourself into the training of that at that stage, or at least getting involved in, some very organized yoga practice.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was just going to a lot of classes. I go to like 3 classes a day, practice 4.5, 5 hours, and took myself on a little bit of a personal retreat, I would call it. So nothing structured.
Sure.
And then was in a class one day and I came out, I'm like, I want to teach this. Like, there's something to this. It makes me feel good. Like, beyond the physical, like, this practice seems to pick me up every time I burn myself out, and it always brings me back to feeling good in my body. So I decided, I wanted to explore it. And being a very strategic person, I'm like, oh my God, like I can't just drop and walk away from my 6-figure salary and this whole life.
Right.
Like
Right.
that sounds a little bit rash. So as you alluded to, Michael, the fitness course, I thought, oh yeah, that's not as much of an investment. Maybe I'll go do a fitness instructor's course and see if I like it. Yeah. And before I'd even finished it, I loved it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to sign up and go and do yoga teacher training.
Right.
So that's kind of how I got into teaching.
Right, and then, if I remember correctly, you started a studio kind of out of your own accommodation in Bairnsdale, if I'm not correct.
So it was quite funny, actually. When I was in Bali, I think I came back to Australia and then I left again, and I just went overseas. I took indefinite leave, so off for an extended period of time, and it was at a time when I thought there was a very, very small chance that I could get a redundancy, that I could get paid out for my engineering job. Sure. And I was waiting in Bali. My family was there. I remember it clearly. And I'm like, guys, I'm going to get a redundancy today. I'm not going back to Australia until I get paid out, because I need the cash to start this business that I want to do that's all yoga and stand-up paddleboarding. And my folks were like,
we're going to get into that. No way. That's a very unique thing that you just brought up with the stand-up paddleboard thing. We'll get more into that as you describe your experience.
Yeah, so I just had this gut feeling. I'm like, no, it's going to happen, and I'm just going to hang out overseas until it does. So I kind of made that commitment to myself. And surely enough,
kind of put it out there.
I put it out there, and it delivered, and it ended up working out perfectly. So I moved back to Bairnsdale, Eastern Victoria. There wasn't really much yoga going on out there.
Not a lot of anything going on out there.
No, but there's so much demand for it. There's so many world-class athletes in that region. And at this time, this is where I was approaching the yoga. It was purely I knew what it could do for the body. I knew its power on the physical level to help us, be more flexible, less prone to injury, all of that sort of stuff, the core support that we get from the practice. But also the mental side of it. So I felt really strongly about sharing that with the people in the community. Yeah. But also had this unique vision of bringing stand-up paddleboarding yoga there. Because it was a beautiful place.
Paddleboarding, it is. It's a gorgeous place. And stand-up paddleboarding was kind of like a new phenomenon, I think, at the time, wasn't it? There was people really getting into it at that stage. I remember hearing about it.
Yeah,
well, I can tell you this: it hasn't reached here yet. Just so.
Actually, I tell you, there's a friend of mine who's listening right now. Her name is Kate Kilduff. She would take very big issue with that. She goes out on her stand-up paddleboard every summer, the entire summer. So
I'm kidding.
it's kind of growing.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it largely depends on where you live. I mean, in East Gippsland, we had some of the most beautiful lake systems in the whole country. And some really stunning weather. So it was not uncommon to see people out on the water, and it was kind of a natural progression from people to move from like kayaks and things to stand-up paddleboards.
But melding yoga and stand-up paddleboarding, I think, was a very unique idea.
Yeah, it was being done elsewhere. I took a course in Singapore to learn how to teach it. And it was more about like, how do you make sure that the body is relatively stable on a very unstable surface? So how do we modify the postures so you're not constantly in the water? Yeah. But the thing that's really awesome about stand-up paddleboard yoga is it's very humbling, right? You could be an amazing yogi on the land, but once you step into that domain of, doing it on water, everything changes. And as soon as
comfort zone.
Yeah, as soon as you get really egocentric about it, you're like, I'm just going to pop up into a headstand or whatever here. Like, the ocean sorts you out. It'll throw you off the board. Like, you're going to be super focused on what you're doing, or you're going to be shown to, step down a notch.
I can't even imagine doing that. If I'm doing yoga, I'm sure you've done this, but you just look at your feet as you're doing yoga, and you see all these muscles constantly moving and just trying to, like, balance your whole body out. It would be insane to do that on a paddleboard. And by the way, you guys have stand-up paddleboarding there. In New York City, we have running from the rats. It's a whole different thing. It's great. It's really intense. It's really good for you.
Yeah, I think I would do a better job of running from rats, actually. I reckon I can find my speed again. You had me being chased by a horde of rats.
So what brought you to the Sunshine Coast? So where you are now and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so the thing about the yoga practice is I was getting like these flashes of like this freedom and this wellness and just this feeling of joy and happiness that, I couldn't quite pinpoint what was causing it. So as yogis, we start to become really curious about this stuff. And when I was in Bali, I'm like, what is it? Like there's a few things that stack up and I turn into this whole different person that's completely free, that doesn't really care what anyone else thinks about me. That's just whole, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I just feel really whole. So I started to kind of journal about, these times that I'd felt like that and working out what the ingredients were. So I kind of worked out the key ingredients to me feeling like that, where it was warm. So the sun was always there. The ocean was there. It was kind of near the water. And there was a really strong community. I was with people that were very like-minded, that, had similar thoughts on the world and all that sort of stuff. Right. I'm like, you know what? These are the things that bring me a lot of joy. And there's the yoga practice there supporting that too. I'm like, I need more of this in my life. Yeah. And when I looked at it, I'm like, you know what? Where I am, like I have the amazing community, but I don't have the yoga. I don't have the sunshine because it's damn cold for half of the year. I'm like, I got to go find somewhere that gives me more of this. So I just packed up the car, packed up the business, and I drove north. Right. And that was it. I just kept driving. I stopped all the way, driving up the coast until I found.
I told you, you Forrest Gumped it. That's what you did. You just kept going.
Yeah, totally.
You Forrest Gumped it.
Yep. I didn't really know where I was going.
Now, I know that you've done quite a bit of practice and training in India. Can you describe what that was like as compared to, say, Indonesia? Because to me, I mean, going to India to learn, to become a yogi or to learn the yoga practice is kind of like, going to the Wailing Wall for a Jewish person. That's like, it's the Mecca.
Yeah, totally. I first traveled there many years ago. Probably 2008 was the first time I went there without a real desire to dive right into the yoga. And then at some stage I enrolled to take a yoga training over there, a 500-hour training. And I went to Mysore. And Mysore is kind of the mecca for what they would call Ashtanga yoga, a particular very athletic style. So I went over there first time and just found this really amazing community and an incredible culture where everywhere you look, there's an element of yoga there. And it felt like home. Like it just literally, it still feels like a second home to me, just like Bali does. They're uniquely different. The Balinese culture, the Indian culture are very different. The yoga that you see in Bali is quite different to the yoga that I practice in India. It's very strict. That was the thing that kind of appeals to a lot of people as well. Like the teachers are going to be really strong on you. They're going to intentionally break you down. To the point where you're like, I don't even want to go to practice anymore. Like he's going to yell at me and he's going to tell me I'm doing the wrong thing, and
sounds like
feel as small as an ant. Totally.
It sounds just like that. It's something Greg and I both did, so I get that philosophy. But I remember following you at the time on Facebook, and you post what you were up to, and I was fascinated by it. But I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but was there not a stage in that training in India where you were not allowed to talk for a week?
Oh, no, that was that was in India, funnily enough. Yeah. They do a style of meditation called Vipassana meditation. It's a Buddhist technique where you go to a center, and the first time that you do it, these centers are all over the world. It's a 10-day commitment. And in that 10-day commitment, you're meditating for 10 and a half hours a day.
Wow.
This is no joke, the toughest endurance thing I've ever sat through in my whole life.
No
There's
kidding.
no distraction. Every part of your body is aching and screaming at you. And you're just watching this craziness of the monkey that lives in your mind telling you all these stories from anything you've ever experienced.
Yeah.
It's talking to you about everything that you're craving and not getting in that moment. And it's telling you everything that you don't like. And you don't talk to anyone for 10 days. You don't even make eye contact. It's what we would call noble silence. 2 meals a day. You get your morning meal, you get your lunch meal, and very, very small dinner. And that's it.
I'd imagine it's pretty good Indian food over there.
Well, the food in India is phenomenal. It's amazing. But on Vipassana, I did it over Christmas, Can you imagine my meditation on Christmas Day? Like just thinking about all the things I'm not eating, going, maybe they'll give us Christmas pudding for dinner. Like, come on, they'll give us something. Only to show up to see like bland boiled rice and a couple of vegetables, not even any dessert.
There's a guy named Jesse Itzler. He's like an entrepreneur. His wife is the CEO of Spanx, and he went and lived with monks for, I believe it was 30 days total. 30 days in total, and it was complete seclusion. And it's an amazing story to listen to. What that does to your brain, like, and he was also an ultra marathon runner, did a 100-mile race. He's done a bunch of crazy stuff, and he said it was like the same thing, like you just said. It was probably the most intense endurance thing he's ever done by far.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My wife makes me do that she makes me not talk for 10 days sometimes, which is really nice. A lot of that helps us.
You've got to see it as an opportunity, though, right? Those times that you have to just be with yourself. It's so insightful how much you learn about ourselves. And
it's got to flip you out. It's got to flip you out a little bit. I mean, you got to think. I mean, it's like almost doing a ton of drugs. I mean, it's almost, I would be equivalent to that. And I've never done drugs, but like it's got to be almost like taking acid or something. Like you just see all kinds of crazy. I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
Well, the intention is you spend the first 3-4 days just focusing on a very, very small triangle from the nose to the upper lip. Like the intention there is you're just watching the breath at that point for literally 3-4 whole days. And then you start moving through the body, like trying to feel inside the body. Like our bodies are just made up of cells of matter. It's everywhere in the universe, and it's all got vibration. Like everything is vibrating.
Right.
If we really start to quieten down and look into the body, we can start to tangibly feel that vibration when we start to get really in tune. So the idea is you scan through your body and you're trying to feel into each little individual part. But inevitably, it's like, oh my God, all I can feel is this sharp stabbing sensation in the back of my shoulder blades.
Right.
And now someone's stabbing me in the lower back, but you've got to try and not associate with the pain. So this is where it's really powerful for athletes as well to learn. And I guess we learn it through the sport that we do as well, that everything comes to pass. That nothing's permanent. So we're all going to go through stages of immense joy and stages of immense suffering. But it will pass no matter what it is. And it's just, how can I ride out this wave of whatever it is that's arising?
Right.
And the trick is, they say, breath. Like you always have your breath with you. The way that you breathe will influence the way you experience. So how can you use your breath as a tool to help deal with those really uncomfortable situations?
Wow.
So that's kind of the premise behind Vipassana meditation, and also yoga. This is where the yoga really feeds in as well. Like this is what our practice is about. We get on the mat, we get ourselves into these crazy shapes to get uncomfortable. Like if you're not getting uncomfortable in your practice, you're not going to affect any change. It's not supposed to be a walk in the park. It's there to challenge us. And it's like, how do you breathe into discomfort and learn to deal with these situations on the mat and hence off the mat?
I think that's great.
During your, it's great. And during that meditation marathon, were you permitted to practice any sort of yoga at all, or was it you just were simply still?
No. Wow. Yeah, it's highly, not during the sits, and they actually ask you to not do anything. Any of your normal practices, no running, none of that. Like just there's no time. Like you're wiped out. You sleep, you eat, you meditate. That's it. But I found like I had to like do a little bit of stretching in the evenings. It's so much pain. Second time was easier. I went back and I took a second round, as you do, and I'll probably go back again in the next year or two. But Second time was easier. Less food. They feed you less, but it was much easier to deal with.
Do they feed you less because they know that you're back? Like, oh, here's Mandy. Let's get her good. Let's give her a donut and let her sit there for 3 weeks.
You don't actually need it, right? That's the thing. Like a lot of us overeat. Yeah.
Oh,
when
no,
you're
I
just
agree.
Sitting all day, you don't really need to
agree.
give the body that much fuel. It just weighs us down, and it actually impacts negatively upon our minds and our ability to concentrate.
Yes.
And you want to fall asleep if you've just had a huge meal. Yeah, so you eat very little.
Now, do you practice that in your everyday life? Are you fasting regularly? Are you just kind of watching what you're eating? Or are you just like eating yogi flakes? I don't know what you eat. I have no idea. I'm just guessing.
It's really funny, actually. Like, I thought I was pretty fit when I was doing triathlon stuff. Like, I was pretty light, but I was very, very bulky and very muscly. I used to eat a lot of meat. Like, I had really low iron. So anytime I went to see anyone, they'd be like, Mandy, you got to eat steak like 3 nights a week, maybe 4, and drink orange juice with your steak and like, just get as much iron as you can, right? So I had a lot of issues when I was doing triathlon. And I was eating a lot. Like, I just couldn't stop eating, basically, trying to fuel the body. Yoga, funnily enough, has been really interesting in that at some point I just stopped eating meat after doing a few intensives in India where they just say, don't eat meat in India. You're more likely to get sick. Refrigeration and stuff's not very good, so just stay on a vegetable diet. And I found that when I ate in that way, I felt so much better. I felt really light. I felt incredible, and I just went off meat, and now I can't even eat it. Like, I feel sick if I try.
Isn't that something?
It's really interesting, and now, like, my iron and everything's amazing.
All at the right levels.
I just eat a lot of green. I don't diet. I eat what I feel like eating. My premise is whatever I put in my mouth, I do so because I know I want that. I don't ever do it with guilt. So I'm not against eating a slice of chocolate cake or whatever it might be. If my body's asking for it, I'll take it. Fully conscious, I'm eating this cake. It's not the best thing for me, but I really feel I want to eat this right now. My eating philosophy is just to do it consciously.
It's a pretty common theme with a lot of people we talk to as far as the meat eating goes. And not to say, I still eat meat. I'm a fireman in New York City, so it's sort of like, and not that I have to, because there's a vegan and a couple vegetarians in our firehouse that will eat separately. It throws off, guys kind of got annoyed by that in the beginning when we had a lot of new young guys coming on, and they would just get annoyed with guys coming in and kind of messing with the meal is sacred in the firehouse. It is like a sacred time. And everyone, whatever we're eating, everybody eats. If you're out on the meal, everyone looks at you like you're a jerk. But now everyone's kind of accepted it, and they the guys that are vegans or vegetarians, nobody really gives them any guff, and we just kind of deal with it, and it's fine. I personally eat meat. I think I don't eat a ton of red meat. I eat more chicken and fish and stuff like that, and that's a pretty common theme, it seems, with all the fitness people we talk to, is that they kind of just avoid it as much as possible, I think, and just kind of fuel themselves in other ways, with veggie. But again, then they're taking supplements to kind of, fill in the whatever the meat was supposed to deliver to you. They're taking supplements, and then some of the people that eat meat are eating, wild game and stuff like that, which I feel probably much better for you than anything you buy in the store. If you're gonna hunt your own meat, I don't really have a problem with that. As far as like from an ethical standpoint, that's fine if you're doing that on your own. As far as the nutritional value, I think it's definitely better. You need to eat something that's wild. Obviously. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously you're not going to eat meat, but if you had to, would you eat wild game?
Oh, I don't know. I kind of struggle with that a little. If I was showing up to somebody's house, I guess, and they didn't know that I was vegetarian, they'd gone out of their way to prepare a beautiful meal that involved me, I wouldn't turn it away. I'd try, but my body will literally, like a couple of times I've been eating with family and they've been like, oh my God, this is the most amazing lamb ever. You have to try it. I'm like, oh, if it's the most amazing ever, I'll have to give it a go. And I can't stomach the taste of it anymore.
Wow.
But I would try. I would try.
being nice,
just out of respect and kindness for, someone who's been slaving away all day. The yoga practice itself, we don't all have to be vegetarians to be practicing yoga. You don't have to be a vegan. The practice isn't asking you to give up anything. It's not asking you to give up religion, nothing.
And I think
it's pretty much asking you to show up. Yeah.
I think that's a misnomer. I think a lot of people have that common misconception about it, that the one is basically the other. I will ask you this: do you find yourself using any sort of supplementation at all, or do you just go completely with God's green earth sort of thing?
No, don't supplement anything. I just listen to my body. I know, and that sounds really esoteric and out there, but
that's good.
If it's missing something, I know.
Right.
And I kind of I'll be craving something salty, or I just, whatever the body's asking for, I feel it with that.
Did you find yourself supplementing when you were doing the the triathlons and the competitive racing? Were you using supplementation then?
Oh yeah, I was on anything that would make me go faster.
Right.
Bar steroids and the like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's a totally different way of being, I guess, my lifestyle now. I'm in tune with my body. My body was a mess when I was doing triathlon. Yeah, but now it runs like clockwork. And I guess I just learned that through the time that I spent in India living that sort of life. My main meal at night times, I would just eat a papaya, like a whole papaya. Yeah, and then go to bed, and I'd practice in the morning at 7, and I wouldn't be done until 10 a.m. And then I'd have a really big breakfast, like omelets, energy balls, smoothies, whatever I can get my hands on, basically. And then would let that sit for a little bit and have a little lunch, like a slightly smaller lunch at 2 p.m. and then go back to practice again at 5. And that's the optimum eating for my body when I'm in intensive practice. I find that works really well.
How many hours of yoga are you currently doing yourself, to include instruction, that sort of thing? Because I'm assuming you were doing it with your students at the same time.
No, I am not.
Okay.
I worked out pretty quickly that was using all my energy, and it wasn't allowing me enough to do my own practice.
Sure.
I've recently dropped a number of classes, but I'm still teaching 13 a week.
Oh, wow.
So I teach 13 classes a week. I run teacher trainings, which is all weekend, 8 hours a day. 3 weekends out of 4 at the moment. So that really takes up a lot of my time. My own practice is not at the level that I would love it to be at, just because of those work commitments. Which is why every year I set aside a month or two to go away back to India to do my immersion, where I get that, 4.5, 5 hours a day.
Now, do you have when you go to India to become a quote unquote yogi, is there some sort of a class that everyone has to complete? Is it some sort of master's degree or a doctorate of yoga that you have to, that you only can get in India, or is that something you can achieve anywhere, as an instructor?
You can do it anywhere. The way that it runs in India is very different. If you're practicing under a teacher in India, or as I do it and many others do, you're kind of committed to that teacher in some regard. You'll go back to them on an annual basis. And for you to be able to practice with them, you have to commit to a minimum of a month. And that's 6 days a week for a month duration minimum. Otherwise, you can't practice with them. You've got to go to casual kind of drop-in yoga classes, which is more what we see here in the West.
Sure, right.
It's a very different teacher-student relationship there. You're kind of committed to one teacher the whole time.
Is the training in India for yoga, is it pretty standardized around the country, or is it going to be very unique to the teacher that that you're with?
Yeah, so this is the thing with yoga, right? I believe there's a yoga practice for every single person on this planet. There is so many different styles, and there's so many different teachers that have different focuses. So there's literally something for everyone. In one place in India, you might find 5 or 6 different styles of yoga, and all being taught completely differently. One could be extremely athletic, where you're literally doing push-ups and back bends in between every single pose for an hour and a half. to the point where, you know, even a really, really fit person coming from a background like me when I first started, you go into one of those classes and you're like, oh my God, I've never been worked this hard. To yoga, where you spend an hour and a half holding postures for 5 minutes each, trying to relax every single muscle in the body. We would call that yin yoga. And for any athletes out there listening that don't get a lot of stretching in their routine, I would strongly encourage you to go try some yin yoga classes. Like, in my experience, that was the rocket ship to getting my flexibility. When I first started the practice, it was really funny. We used to see a physio who would do a report on the state of our hips and our shoulders and the like. And mine were in a dismal state. Like, I had positive hip flexion when I'd lay down on the bench. Like, my hip flexors were that short. It was insane. And now, like, the body that I have today, like, still blows me away. I can't even believe I can touch my toes all of the time. I'm like, how is this happening? Like, it just doesn't feel like the same body that I had 4 years ago, not even close.
That's incredible.
So the yin yoga practice, I feel like for athletes, it's challenging in that you're going to sit with yourself. The mind's going to go crazy for the 5 minutes that you're holding the pose, and there's a lot of silence. But if you can really just stay with it and just focus on the breath and focus on what you feel in the body, you really start to make some headway in breaking through myofascial tension. Or go to a really active class, like an Ashtanga style, a vinyasa class, where you're really going to get worked. You're going to stretch in every which way. You know, the movement keeps you present. But as I said, there's a million different styles out there. There's a style called Iyengar, where everything's really supported. You're using like straps, blocks, ropes on walls, all sorts of things.
Yes.
There's what would be called a hatha style, where you hold the poses a lot longer. There is everything out there under the sun. So if I could get one message across, it's like, don't go do one yoga class and be like, that was crap. Just be like, you know what, that's not the style for me. Maybe I'll go try something different, right? Because there's going to be something that works to all dispositions for all people.
Right.
Which brings me... go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You had.
No, I was going to bring me to a point of, yoga, I think, and I'm a novice, trust me, like, I'm like just a Y, I'm not even an O yet, so, like, not even close to anything. But anyway, I've done yoga a little bit here and there, and I started to do it about 3 times a week, but I just kind of made my own routine, and I just do my own thing. I don't follow any practice. I just have like I do some vinyasas. I do, some, downward dog, upward dog. I just, back bends, a little stretch. I just try to stretch my body out. And it seems to be really helping. I'm running a lot, and I'm doing a lot of mileage right now. And it seems to be great because I usually would, by this point in the amount of running that I've done this year, I would have already been injured and have been hurt in some aspect. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been hurt, and I feel great. And I don't get, I can run 10, 12 miles right now and not feel it at all. Like, I could be done after the run and literally have no pain whatsoever. I don't know if I'm assuming that has something to do with yoga. The other thing I'm doing too is I'm also meditating every day for about 10 minutes, which I think, which I want to ask you about, because I was actually watching, and most everything I find out about, or that I know anything about, I find off of YouTube, just so you know. So basically, I'm full of shit. But I do some research or whatever, and I love, looking stuff up, and I found one of those TED Talks where there was a psychiatrist who, a clinical psychiatrist that was doing brain scans on some of his patients, and a lot of these patients were injured or not. They were, they had head trauma. Some of them. One of his patients was actually his nephew. He had come to find out he had a tumor on his brain. The kid was acting very strangely for a long time, acting very badly, doing lots of really terrible things and drawing pictures of horrible things. He was the next, mass shooter, right, in the United States. Of course, we have one every week. He was one of those. It looked like he was going to be one of those kind of kids. Well, they did some brain scans on. They found there was some sort of a tumor on his brain that they removed, and as soon as they removed the tumor, the kid was totally fine, completely normal, never acted like that ever again. And then they also continued to do meditation with him to heal that part of his brain that was traumatically injured. And then they did a lot of research on a lot of NFL football players here in the States, which is, a very dangerous, insane sport. Guys getting hit all the time really, really hard. Like rugby, obviously, same type of deal. I'm sure you guys deal with the same stuff over there where guys have, traumatic brain injuries from these sports. And it seemed that they drug these people to try to help them, and they put them on all kinds of drugs. But the real issue is brain healing, and it's through meditation and healing your brain that way. And according to this doctor and the 80,000 scans that they did and the 80,000 scans that they did after these people were healed, that it really does work. I mean, this is like scientifically proven. If you meditate every day, it will change your brain chemistry. It'll change your brain, everything. It'll heal your brain, essentially. So I think, I don't know if you've looked into that or if you know a lot about that or whatever, but I'm sure you can attest to that fact that
Absolutely.
that it really does work.
So the interesting thing is, right, this is what a lot of people don't know about yoga, and there's this common misconception that yoga is the poses, right? It's you look it up on Instagram and the picture you'll get of yoga is that it's someone standing on their hands contorting themselves into some sort of crazy shape, that you've essentially got to be a pretzel to do yoga.
Right.
Right.
The true yoga is actually, it's way more than that. The cornerstones of yoga are not only the physical practice, which we would call the asana. That's the postures, I guess, you've been doing, Greg, at home. There's meditation. The whole purpose of all those poses in the Vedas, where it all comes from, back into the ancient philosophy, the purpose of yoga was to get yourself to a position where you can sit and comfortably meditate. So all these fancy postures and things that we're doing, that was all innovated over time. But originally there was only a very, very small number of poses that were designed to open up the body enough so that you could sit and then do the meditation. So the meditation
goes hand
is
goes hand in hand.
Yeah, meditation is one of the higher goals of the yoga practice. One doesn't sit without the other. They're entirely interrelated. And another really important cornerstone of the practice is breath. We call this pranayama, control of the breath, because that also links into our nervous system and our nervous system response. So the yoga in itself, like, it's way more than just the postures. It's kind of incomplete if we're only doing the postures. There's a lot of benefit there in the meditation. That's the higher purpose of the practice. And it's an interesting one. Yeah, like I struggled with it for years, with meditation practice. Couldn't consistently get into it. I just kept coming back to the physical poses, and it was just, I believe the reason why I struggle with it so much was just through lack of being willing to sit with the own craziness of the mind. It's hard.
Right.
There's the
so the success is linking yoga and meditation together. They have to go together.
They have to go together. Yeah. If you're looking for the higher goals of yoga, you're not going to get there without the meditation. You're just going to become an awesome gymnast who can contort yourself into amazing shapes. We could go way further than that. Like, there's also a whole bunch of like moral and ethical principles that underline the overall picture of yoga. That's a whole nother conversation. But
sure.
The meditation thing, the common misconception is that you should be able to sit down and your mind should be quiet.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who can do that.
No.
The greatest adepts can't even really do that, right?
I agree 100%. And that's actually when I do this this particular meditation, it's an app that he's actually a chief that I work with. He's a fire department chief, and he's a really cool guy. Tattoos all over his arm. Doesn't look like somebody that would be meditating by any means, but he's totally into it. Very, very cool. And he told me about this app, and I downloaded it. And that's exactly when the first thing that's said on the meditation is that, hey, you're not going to be good at this. Like, you're going to suck, and it's going to be terrible, and you're going to be like, what the F am I doing here? Because I'm not getting it. Like, I'm just not getting there or whatever. But I think, and again, I'm very novice to this, but I'm open to that. I understand it. I get it. And I hope that it gets better and better. And I know that I feel better after I do it. I feel like I've accomplished something that a lot of people don't do. And at least I just tried to turn off my brain for a minute, because there's just so many. Everyone has so much stuff going on all the time. There's just so much stuff, and it's impossible, I think, to completely turn that stuff off.
No,
as much
and
as
that's
we
not
try.
the intention of the practice. The
Right.
intention is to start to learn how crazy our minds are, like to watch that and to see what's arising, and then not be attached to it, right? So something comes up and you have the option of following the rabbit down the hole and continuing to feed that thought pattern, and that takes us away from meditation. Or it's simply seeing the thought arise and going, oh, that's interesting. All right, now let's let that one pass by and wait for the next thing to come up, because it will come up. They will keep coming, whether we like it or not. And the practice is really, can you outlast your mind?
And maybe that's why runners, I think, might end up gravitating toward yoga and just meditation in general. I think because you kind of go through that as a runner, or as an endurance athlete. You go through these peaks and valleys, and when you talk about walls, there's multiple walls. I mean, there's no such thing as, oh, you hit the wall. Like, no, you're going to hit the first of many walls. And I think you're going to hit that with doing yoga, and obviously with meditation.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's the point as in endurance sport, where you got to go, all right, there's the wall. Right. How am I going to get past this? What am I going to do? All right, I'm going to breathe. I acknowledge the wall's there. I'm not going to walk away. Because if you keep walking away every time meditation gets hard, you're never going to make any progress.
No. As with anything in life.
Yeah, and another really awesome thing to know is there's literally, just like there is different styles of yoga, there's so many different styles of meditation, right?
Sure.
There's plenty of styles where you're actually engaging the mind. So one of my favorite ones is to just count backwards. Literally just start at 108, and every time I breathe in, I would say, okay, 108, breathe out, say 108 again. Breathe in, say 107. Breathe out, say 107. And I just keep counting down. And every time I drift off and I disappear, I go back to 108. And my goal is, can I get to 0? Like, that's a meditation practice right there.
With a goal, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're an athlete and you've got a big event coming up, it can be a mantra. Like, you can just be repeating, like, whatever your obstacle is. It could just be, I've got this. On the inhale, I've got this. On the exhale, do that for 5 minutes. You'll feel like gold. You come out and you're like, yeah, I've got this. That's meditation. Right. It's one-pointed focus.
I'm also a big believer in, whatever you believe in. I'm sort of I'm a big believer in this multiverse idea, where there's just multiple universes going on, and you're just in this one. Like, we just so happened we all branched off into the Donald Trump one, which is crazy, that we branched off into this reality that we're in.
That's how we can branch away from
Right. And honestly, I think if we just all believe it, if you just believe in anything, I mean, of course, believe that Donald Trump, his hair is going to choke him to death or whatever. But the point is like, or a giant bird's going to land in his hair like a nest and end up eating him. I don't know. But anyway, but my thing is that, if you just believe it, and I think I've demonstrated this when I've run, 50-mile races. I went there believing I was going to run 50 miles. I didn't go there thinking, you know what, maybe I'll run 50. No, I was like dead set. Like, there's no way I'm not going to run that 50-mile race. I'm going to finish it. And I did. And that's the only reason I finished. It had nothing really to do. It had some to do with my training, obviously. But really, all my training does is just make me faster at accomplishing my goal. Ultimately.
So true.
So,
that's perfect.
but the reality is I got there because I believed it. And I think if you just believe in anything that you want, it'll happen in some way in regards to that. Like, I believed I wanted to be married to my wife, and I pushed that goal. I really wanted that to happen. I knew down deep that that's what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to have children. I did that, so it happened for me. I was very blessed and lucky for it to happen. But, if I was this negative guy and always negative and mad at everything and angry, and that stuff wouldn't have happened for me, I don't think,
I think in deference to my sister-in-law who's listening, I think she had a little bit of something to do with that there, too.
No, she did. She totally did. She totally did.
The awesome thing is, Greg, you're already a yogi. Like, your mindset, like, that is what you're talking about there is so ingrained in yoga philosophy. There's a beautiful line in one of the texts that says, as the mind, so the person, bondage and liberation are born of the mind.
Nice.
I have the first passage tattooed on my arm, funnily enough, and it's like you say, like, our minds are very, very powerful, and this is why meditation is so important. And we train the mind so we don't fuel it constantly with negativity.
Right, and I think, and another thing, and that's why I think religion has been so popular and such a huge thing over the last 2,000 whatever years, is because it's all based on meditation. It's all coming from people just kind of sitting down once a week and shutting the fuck up. Like everyone shut up and just be silent for a minute. Just shut your face. Like, just like everyone chill the fuck. And like, whether you believe in it or not, the idea of sitting down and praying is really just meditation. So, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing. Just like fasting, the idea of fasting has deep roots in religion, and that's really, it wasn't about, probably just because they didn't have any food back then, but also it's healthy. Right. It's healthy. Just stop fucking eating. Stop eating so much all the time. This goes out to the Americans that are listening. Like, stop eating. What's wrong with you?
It's so funny when we look at that stuff. Like, all the answers were there thousands of years ago. Like,
right.
It's all there. Like, all the keys that we need to health, to how the universe was created, why we're here, like, it's all been looked at before. And those guys didn't have TVs. They weren't distracted in whatever is dragging us away. They just sat and they contemplated on this world, on this universe, on our bodies, and they learned a lot.
Right.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if being a teacher over here in New Zealand? Could you imagine if the generation of kids that are coming up today meditated half as much as they were on their devices? What a different generation we have coming out.
Yeah, it would be a very beautiful world that we would be creating.
Absolutely.
I make my kids. I tried with my kids. Just so you know, I did try to meditate with my kids, and my daughter was into it totally. My son wanted to throw a brick at my head. It's just like, boys are boys.
Hard to get kids to latch onto this kind of thing. Now, Mandy, I want to ask you, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. How Mandy Habener, where is she now? What is she doing? What is she trying to promote? We want you to plug away. Let us know what's out there. Give the listeners out there information how they can.
Here's my question: how can somebody sign up to come to Australia? Because I do have friends that actually travel quite a bit, and come to a class and meet the Mandy, and do some serious yoga and meditation. How would they go about that?
It's pretty easy, really. We're all over the place. So at the moment, I teach here on the Sunshine Coast at 3 places. One's called Zenko Yoga. They have a couple of studios. Also teach at a place called Flight Fit, which is a little boutique gym. Amazing workouts there. And then also at a place called Noosa Springs, which is a kind of boutique resort up in Noosa.
Yeah, beautiful.
So that covers a lot of my classes. You can find me online, actually. I teach a couple of classes online every week, live from the lounge room. The website for that one is A Live Yogi, and all the classes go into a library. So there's about, 40 classes of mine in there already.
Oh, that's cool. So if somebody wanted to watch, they can watch you, they can take a class with you online via the internets. Gotcha.
The best thing
That's
is you
excellent.
don't even have to like get up and get dressed. You can roll out of bed, turn on your computer, and there we are
Right.
doing yoga together.
That's great.
Quite
That's
cool.
excellent. That's
Yeah.
really good.
And
so
that's twice a week.
That's twice a week you do that. I was just going to ask.
Yep. And then run yoga teacher trainings here on the Sunshine Coast. We do a couple of those a year in the level 1. That's like the pretty serious practitioners where we spend, 180 hours together diving into all elements of yoga. So into the practice itself, the physical postures, the meditation, the philosophy, the works, the breath. Not really much left behind. Currently in the process of designing level 2 for that. We've had a lot of people asking for the next stage because yogis are always seeking to learn and find out more, generally speaking. So we're doing the next stage of that. Pretty busy, actually, when I think about it. I don't like to use the word busy. I like to say I'm just like grateful for all the opportunities. I'm full of opportunities right now.
That's great.
And the other things that are coming up is a couple of retreats. So we've got a retreat in Bali in September, which is 5 nights, and a trip that we run to India every year coming up in March or April.
Now, if we wanted to attend that, anyone listening, how would we get a hold of you? Is that through the same website you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, everything's on my website, mandyhabener.com. Loads of stuff on social media. Of course,
you have a Facebook page, Mandy Habener Yoga Facebook page as well.
And YouTube, she does have a YouTube page as well, so definitely check that out.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a few free videos on there. There's bits and pieces everywhere. But I love answering questions, like getting down into the nitty-gritty of stuff, so always open to engaging in any conversation that's around yoga. I could talk about it day in, day out and never get bored. I don't even feel I work, to be real. Like, I just feel like
that's a great thing. I mean, to feel that way is that's like a dream. And speaking of questions and answers, one of the things Greg and I are going to do as our podcast evolves is to start bringing in questions from our listening audience, so that when we have someone on like yourself, have some pre-prepared questions. And of course, we'd love to have you back on. For another installment, maybe specifically to answer some of these questions. As they get generated.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, always keen to help debunk some of the yoga and just, I guess, show people that it's for everyone. Like it's not that crazy. You don't have to be a pretzel. You don't have to be skinny. You don't have to be thin. You don't have to be a female who's 30 years old. Like, there's nothing. I get so excited when I have like older men come in that are like in their 70s and they've been cyclists their whole lives and they're really stiff and they find that courage to step through the door.
That's great. It's the first step. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Like there's something there for everyone.
That's great.
Well, that's really good. Really good. And Greg and I were stoked to be able to get you on. We really enjoyed having you on this particular show today. And I think you've given a lot of food for thought for a lot of people out there. I think myself personally, when we sign off here, I'll be meditating in my living room. I might as well give it a go.
Yeah. Do get yourself like an app or something that can help guide you through. There's a few really good ones out there. I use one called Insight Timer. It's a free app.
Manny, that's the one I use as well, actually. Funny enough.
Yep.
What do you know?
Yeah, it's so cool. We can meditate together. Like, we can become friends, and I can keep you accountable. And be like, hey, meditate for like a week. What's going on?
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool, Mike. So Mike needs to sign up on that because I need to hold him accountable for it as well.
I got to get all into that. Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah, but it's free. There's loads of guided options on there as well. So, great place to start.
Yes, that's very, very good. Awesome. Well, Mandy, I really appreciate the insight. I think it's awesome. We definitely want to have you back on at some point because we love talking about this stuff. I love talking about it. And I think we can get deeper into it. There's so much more to talk about when it comes to this stuff, totally. on just so many levels. There's so many things going on. And the fact that you were you've completed all these Ironmans and you've done all these triathlons, that speaks to me as well because I'm way into endurance sports and that kind of stuff. So really awesome to have you on. Thanks very, very much for coming on.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, we're going to link your stuff to our page so that when people have a listen to this podcast, they can quickly click into your world and get introduced. And so, but yeah, no, both Greg and I are very happy to have you on, and really appreciate you taking the time to basically school us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. I really appreciate it.
You're very
Fantastic.
welcome.
We'll do it again.
And thanks
I'll
again,
send
Mandy.
you some sunshine.
Please do. And everyone, thanks so much.
Please.
Mandy Habener, Yogi Extraordinaire, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Honestly, it was just an amazing thing that we experienced there with Mandy. I think we've enlightened ourselves quite a bit on all the things that she had to say. Again, I think yoga and endurance sports all really connects. I think that if you're into endurance sports or any really sports at all, or even if you're not, I think that yoga is such an important part, and I think Mandy really showed that to be true with this interview.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
I mean, if good thing that we have a podcast and you can listen to this again, guys, because really go back a second time, listen to it, listen to the substance of what Mandy's talking about. This is, yoga is a life solution. Meditation is a life solution. You don't have to be an ultramarathon runner to benefit, but certainly if you are in endurance sports, it's going to help you. It's going to help you in life. It's going to help you on a mental level. It's going to help you obviously physically. But as what I found fascinating about that interview was that yoga was initially set up so that people could be prepared to meditate. And it wasn't about becoming fit or, being able to, as Mandy would say several times, bending yourself into a pretzel. It was a prep so that you could learn to meditate. The ultimate goal is really meditation on a deep level. And I found that's something I never thought of. And obviously the fact that she's immersed herself in it, she really taught me a lot in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think one of the other important things to remember in this, and I think because there's a lot of endurance that listen to this podcast, is that want to be endurance athletes and are looking to be an endurance athlete. And I think this is just something that always holds true in anything that you do, is that when you're uncomfortable, it's okay. You should be uncomfortable. Right. You should be, being uncomfortable is helping you grow. And if you're not making yourself uncomfortable, then you're not doing it right. You should be uncomfortable for a little bit. You don't have to always be uncomfortable, but being a little bit uncomfortable, whether it's working out or it's in your life, you should do that. It makes your brain grow. It makes you a better. It's just gonna. Yeah.
You gotta step out of your comfort zone.
Right.
I mean, that's something I think people hear a lot about, but I think the way Mandy framed that with her journey really kind of hit a home run with how that applies to life in general.
Right. Agree. Again, guys, thanks so much for joining us. We have some awesome interviews coming up. We actually have an interview with some comedians coming up, which I'm really excited about. Pat Marone, we have him coming up. We got a couple other big names coming up that we're not going to quite announce just yet, but very soon.
Still organizing it.
Still organizing it. We got those in the pipeline. And again, if anyone is an endurance athlete or a musician or anybody, really, if you want to chat with us, send us an email, gregtherunningdrummer@gmail.com, or visit us at runningdrummer.com.
Don't we have an 800 number too?
We do. 800-590-3044. If you want to call us directly, give us a buzz. We'll eventually be doing some live stuff over Facebook Live and also on YouTube Live, where we'll be actually podcasting live, where you can see our ugly mugs, and we'll chat with you directly. So that would be really cool. If you have questions, we'll try to answer them the best we can. Again, we're not experts here. I mean, I know
That's
how
why we bring on the experts.
we
That's
bring
why
on the experts, and
Yeah.
I do know quite a bit about running and exercise, so I'm more than happy to give you my perspective. But again, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. And remember, somebody who's busier than you is running right now. So get off your asses.
Get off your ass.
Get off your ass. Quit being a lazy bum, will you? All right,
That's
thanks,
it.
guys.
Perfect.
We'll talk to you next week.
See you guys.